To our second Flaminglet webinar for 2025. This one was not something that I actually had on my agenda, but because of so many requests coming from you guys, we've decided that this should be our next topic. We can't avoid it. We have to speak to the elephant in the room. And I am so privileged to have two wonderful people here with us tonight. Two women that have certainly shaped my career in medicine in very different ways, but both of them have been incredible mentors. I believe that they have become friends over the years. And I have the deepest respect for both of them, for Lydia and as well as Michelle, as Maria. So coming from, it's really strange, two very different sides of medicine, but ironically, two people that have so much in common. And I think that's why I resonate so deeply with each one of them. So for those of you that don't know, Professor Lydia Cairncross from the Department of Surgery at Groote Schuur Hospital. Lydia's got a CV as long as my arm, and I'm not going to bore you with that. I think the most important thing to know about this woman is that she is a phenomenal leader in medicine, and she does it in a way that is utterly unique. That's really shifting the world of surgery, shape-shifting medicine as she goes along. A voice in medicine that I have the utmost respect for, and I think somebody that can speak with great insight about the future of medicine in this country. Lydia, thank you so much for your very valuable time. I know you are so busy, and I really appreciate it because even though this is for the students, Maria will know that even I, and I'm sure you, all of us, take pause every now and again thinking about our future in medicine. So welcome and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's an overly kind introduction, but thank you
No.
so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Apologies if there are noises from either children or puppies in the background. So
That's great. We like that. And then, of course, Dr. Maria Christodoulou, that may not be as well known to all our students. But if you don't know Maria yet, you should. And I really want to encourage all of you to immediately go and subscribe to her podcast, the Awakening Doctor podcast. That changes my world every time I listen to it. Maria, you are also a shapeshifter and a groundbreaker in medicine. You have crafted an incredibly unique career path. You can speak to these young people, I think, in a way that few people can. And I'm really, really looking forward to them actually having access to your voice and your mind with regards to their future in medicine. We speak a lot about my path in medicine, and I would not have been able to navigate it without you. So thank you for your presence and for helping us, have this conversation.
Thank you, Liana. Like Lydia, I also feel like that's a very generous introduction, but it's been a huge privilege to be a part of your journey, and I'm not quite sure what I will say tonight, but I think it's an important conversation that we're having, and I'm very glad to be a part of it.
Yes. So Maria and Lydia, I'm going to try and kick us off. This is a dialogue. This is not nobody prepared anything, and I think all of us want this conversation to be from our hearts, because I think everybody that's here, and it's not just students, it's young doctors as well, interns, medical officers. What we are looking for is guidance, but also authenticity and honesty in this conversation. And what's been clear from emails that I've received, phone calls that I've received, is there is a creeping anxiety and panic among our young medical health or our healthcare professionals. Questions that I get in different versions over and over again. Nobody around me seems happy. Is that my future? And it makes me quite sad when I hear that, but I think it is unfortunately a prevalent question that comes up. I don't know what to think about the NHI. What does it mean for my career? So there's fear and anxiety that's bigger than the individual that seems to seep into people's, mind when they think about how do I go forward. I'm already exhausted. Please tell me it gets better. I have such big dreams, but no matter how hard I try, there are just no opportunities. And this is a phone call that I get repeatedly, especially from people that's just finished community service. They are medical officers. They are desperate to take the next step in their career, but they seem to be running into a wall. Everything and everyone around me is broken. I just don't see a future. And then I don't know if it's worth continuing on this path. So these are all comments that I hear in various iterations, but that I find very concerning, number one. And number two, I really think it is worth spending time speaking to this. What I would like us to also do, and as students, young doctors, whatever, is to ask ourselves some questions when we speak, as an internal process as well. Something that I've learned through my conversations with Maria, just to keep it in the background, is when we ask these questions, how far are you willing to go to uncover the answers to your questions? And can you accept those answers? So let that just sit a little bit with you, because I really want this to be an invitation to everybody that's listening, an invitation to reignite your passion for medicine. But as much as it pains me to say it, also an invitation to say, it is okay to say that this is not working for me. And how do we go from there? So the other thing that I keep bumping up against is who or what is this system, this evil system that is, spitting out on the other side exhausted human beings. Who is it? Is it the government? Is it the hospitals? Is it the medical hierarchy? Is it medical aides? Is it patients? Who is the system that we seem to be bumping up against? And what is the driving force behind your questions? What is the driving force behind your fear and anxiety? Is it internal? So is it coming from within? This may not be, something about this isn't right for me. Or is it fear and anxiety that is being imposed on you externally from external pressures? And I think a really important thing to think is this difficult because it is hard? Because I think medicine is hard. Or is it because it's wrong? This is actually not the path that we should be on. Where does openness and protection end and dangerous fragility begin? And do you know why you are here? Right, so these are little prompts for our distinguished speakers, Maria and Lydia. I wanted to keep it quite open-ended. So from what I've shared so far, where do we begin? Where do we begin this conversation? How do we open this up in a way that's kind, that's compassionate, and helpful to the people listening? Lydia, does
Thanks,
this
Liana.
resonate?
So I think thanks first of all for surfacing the conversation in this way, because sometimes I think we just don't talk about it enough. And I hear a lot in the corridors, when we were young, we were like, we could handle all the stuff, what is going on now, which I find quite not only unhelpful, but also short-sighted. Um, and I think the question of why is all of the above. So I think first of all, to start with, yes, medicine is very, very hard. But there are privileges of being part of the medical family, and being able to know that every day I can pitch up and in some way I can make a difference to someone's life directly, immediately, even if it's the quality of communication, eye contact, how you sit down next to the bed, even if you don't cure, treat, diagnose any of those things, because it's such an intimate thing. And I think that intense reward that people in the health sphere get from their work is what keeps us going and rejuvenates us and enables us to continue. So there's something going on in the balance between the strain and that return in terms of a sense of purpose and impact, which is happening. I mean, we can talk a bit about the mechanics of what's happening around the health system now as well. But I think if we situate that balance between what we're putting in and what we're receiving, not in terms of remuneration, but in terms of seeing that we're helping people, I think we're missing some of that balance at the present moment. And the question, of course, is why? And I don't think this is a just Cape Town, just public health system, just private health system, just South Africa problem. I think this is a global problem. And it's not just a problem within the health sector. I think it's a problem with the way that we are living in general as a society. And I think a lot about this because I have two young children. So I'm seeing them grapple with this fast-paced, hyper-connected, but also disconnected beingness that we have, that we can't breathe, we can't think, we don't get outside, we are just running on a treadmill. So there's something that is wrong about that, which is not specific to medicine. But in medicine, we also brush up against people at the extreme. So I always say that everything in society, all the ills of society eventually wash up at the doors of the hospital. So whether it be violence or alcohol abuse or interpersonal stress and violence, or whether it be substance abuse or just self-neglect and chronic disease, all of those things eventually wash up at the doors of the hospital. So it's a double hit because we're experiencing this strange, stressful ramp up in our personal, individual, social networks, as well as seeing it at its most extreme form as it comes through the hospital doors. And the biomedical training that we get doesn't prepare us to deal with either of those realities. So I'll pause there and let Maria come in, and then I can talk a bit later about some of the health systems issues that are relevant.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. Maria, your thoughts?
I'm happy to just keep listening to Lydia. I think she's so articulate in describing the dilemma and that it is such a complex dilemma and that it's multifactorial. It's not just about the profession, it's about what's happening in the world that we're living in and the level of complexity and uncertainty that we're all facing. And even when I was thinking about this conversation tonight, I found myself I noticed this inclination to go and read up on what the alternative career options are. And then I sat back and I thought, that's interesting that I'm feeling like I have to somehow have a solution to this problem. Like that's so much a part of our training. We don't know how to sit with uncertainty. We don't know how to sit with not knowing. We don't know how to sit in the vulnerability of chaos and complexity, even though one of the things we learn to do when dealing with patients is managing complexity and uncertainty and kind of thinking about best case scenarios and worst case scenarios. And I think if I take it to a meta level, there's a couple of things that are happening. I think there's a paradigm shift in terms of where the world is at and what is being required of our health systems that we are not prepared for. And then I think there's a paradigm shift happening in terms of who we are as doctors, who we are as human beings who have chosen to enter this profession. And in a way, a questioning of the privilege really of assuming a sheltered kind of employment. There was always, if you study medicine, you're going to get a good job and you're going to make a good income and there must be posts available and there must be opportunities to specialize because, you've invested so much in this career. And I think it's really challenging our identity. Who am I if I can't specialize? And I sometimes find it so interesting that young people who by definition, were amongst some of the brightest, smartest young people of their generation who find themselves in medical school and then go through the medical training and come out on the other side so conditioned by the hierarchy that these are the steps that you must follow to make a successful career. And then when those steps are not available anymore, it's like they don't know what to do and they don't know where to go and they don't know who they are. And so I think it's a complex mix of dealing with a changing world and a changing system, learning to navigate uncertainty, complexity, and also being challenged, I guess, in some ways to get creative about how we apply our knowledge and how we are a part of the system, that we can't rely on the safety of the old way of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Maria, since I'm gonna go back to Lydia now, but as a coach for somebody sitting here and that feels so overwhelmed, we all know when you are burnt out, you know, you don't even know where to start. But
Right.
certain prompts just to say, okay, where is this anxiety seated? Is it me? Is it everything happening around me? Is it both? And is it for somebody that don't have, they don't have access to a coach, that, student health is not being that helpful. Where does somebody begin as a grounding exercise to say, okay, I'm in this. I need to figure out what is mine, what I can control, and what sits outside of me. And I need to decide this is a hard I can do or a hard I can't do. It's a complex question. I don't know if I'm asking multiple questions in one, but you sort of get where I'm going.
Well, I think you've already articulated it. It's how does one come back to center in the midst of all the chaos and uncertainty and stay still long enough to get clear about what is yours and what is not yours. And, if you are burnt out, that's often really difficult to do. And as much as I'd like to think that we can pull ourselves out of burnout on our own, I don't think so. I think you need support, and I think you need help, and I think you need to reach out to somebody. And at the same time, there's also something that we don't learn in medical school, is that life is a series of cycles of birth and death. And there are moments in all of our lives when the world as we know it falls apart and there's no certainty that the ground that we're standing on is shifting from underneath us. And in those moments, we can either kind of like collapse into this puddle of like despair about the fact that life isn't turning out the way that we wanted it to, or we can start asking the question of what is it that is calling me? And it goes back to, in this sort of situation, what brought you to medicine in the first place? What was it that called you to the profession? And you will know, Liana, because you listen to the podcast. It's a question I ask every doctor that I meet. Like why medicine? And for most of us, it's this immense desire to help people. And then somewhere along the way, we think that the only way to help them is by being on the front line in the medical fraternity. And of course, we know we have a shortage of doctors, and the health system is under enormous pressure to meet the needs of our population. But at the same time, I believe that each of us has a unique contribution to make to this system, and that each of us has a unique way that we will offer our gifts to the system. And yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question. It feels
No,
like
you are.
can you sit
You are.
still long enough to ask the question of what is my unique contribution going to be? And then beyond that, it's also to start talking to other people, to start exploring and reading and looking at what other options and opportunities, how have people shaped their careers? How do people deal with difficult, complex change? Because I
Yes.
think that for many of our younger colleagues, the path of intern, comserve, registrar, specialist, consultant isn't going to be the norm.
No, it's not. It's not.
And as
Lydia,
scary and as terrifying as that is, it's also an opportunity.
yes,
It's an
for sure.
opportunity.
Lydia, so very practically for people. So let's just say, okay, great. Medical school's done, internships done, ComServe's done. Somebody is desperate to take the next step for you. What advice do you have for them very practically how to navigate the system going from there onward.
Yeah, thanks, Liana. So I think, I mean, I'd have a surgical lens on that to give you the exact pathway. Um, and I think post-com service, you're really looking at finding a medical officer job, usually in a regional or district hospital in the field that you want to specialize in, assuming that you do want to specialize. And I think that it's really an important thing that we need to start speaking to medical students and early career doctors, that specialization is not the failure to not specializing is not a failure. Doing something, it's choosing something different. And so anyway, aside from that, if specialization is the path, then it's a medical officer type of job in a smaller hospital, usually where you can gain the skill set that you need to enter a registrar program, usually doing some of the exams first, like primaries, sometimes even intermediates, but at least primaries. And then sending CVs to various universities for entrance. And that's really been the pathway as it's been for a very, very long time. The problem now that early career doctors are facing, aside from the extremely long post-qualification time period, I think 3 years is too long, whether it's 1 year com service, 1 year in, however we want to configure it, 3 years is too long. As a country, we need to seriously look at that. We cannot have young doctors for 2 years of their lives not knowing what's going to happen next and beyond that. So what's changed is, so we have the 3 years, but what's changed is the post 3 year bottleneck is that the health system has not grown in terms of public sector posts to meet the number of graduates that have come out of the medical schools. So people are not crazy. There is a real problem. We actually have the incredible madness of having an unemployment crisis amongst junior doctors, early career doctors in this country, which is insane. So we actually have not a shortage of doctors, we have a shortage of public sector posts to employ doctors into. There's plenty of work to do. And then step from that is the number of training positions at the tertiary hospitals has not only not increased, in many cases has reduced. So what people are experiencing is this incredible bottleneck of trying to get through into that system where there just aren't enough positions for the number of doctors that we've trained. I think there are significant moves to shift that. So just to bring in a little element of hope. So I think there are at very senior levels discussions happening around what are we doing around internship and community service and the length of time that it takes. What are we doing around medical officer positions, around registrar positions? There's a human resources for health plan that is on the table that is being discussed. So there is an awareness that this is a crisis actually, because it undermines the entire profession. If you train for 6 years and then work for another 3 years and then you struggle to find work. That's a crazy investment for any society to make into people who then can't contribute. So I think there is a growing awareness of that problem, and I think it will shift. And when that does shift, then what we actually need to look at is what do we want and need as a health system? What does a balanced health system look like in terms of human resources? Do we need subspecialists everywhere? Is that what we need? And or do we need them in academic centers? And how many specialists do we need? And how many generalists? And how many professional medical officers? And how many professional nurse practitioners and specialist nurses and community health workers? So the balance of the health system needs to be intentional, and it isn't at the moment. So people are kind of struggling, and they've been given a sense of this is what a successful career looks like, and you just have to go and get that thing. But actually, the health system's not set up, A, to do it, and B, also that's not true anymore. There are many, many ways to success, and it's the hierarchy of what is better needs to change. And I often say to medical students, it's much more difficult to be a generalist than it is to be a specialist or a
For sure.
subspecialist, because it's just harder. The smaller and narrower your field gets, the more clever you seem about that one thing. But we need to turn on its head that hierarchy, and bring back a sense of value to every layer, every circle within the health system, rather than every hierarchical layer. Every circle is important.
Wow. So when are you becoming Minister of, of Health, Lydia? No, that is beautiful. I think that it's wonderful to hear that conversations are being had, that people are proactively thinking about these things. I think that is hugely reassuring for the people that is now in this. They are the people that's almost they are the change. They are pressuring the change. Their existence is causing the change. How do they go about? Do you think it will count against people if they've spent a few years doing general practitioner work before they attempt to re-enter for a specialist position, or spend time overseas? Or would you recommend rather locuming and spending time doing research? Is there anything that, as it stands now, with the crisis that we're facing, things that people can do to position themselves for options in the future?
I think they're not great options though. I mean, we have a lot of people volunteering in our system. And I mean, I say that hesitantly because not everyone can do that, and it shouldn't actually be the way things are done. But I think if you are doing GP work or you are overseas, to try and find a way to connect with the area that you are interested in being in later in some way, even if you've got a full-time job, but maybe you volunteer for half-day list, or you do a little bit of research with a team. So those things do help. Um, it's just quite difficult to suggest that because the job itself is so much already. It's very painful for me, this topic actually, because I see so many young people come to me and they're like, I don't want to do this, and I can't. So I don't have a good suggestion, but I know that that is what people are doing. So we have people volunteering at hospitals, learning to do operations, volunteering in ICU. We have some people doing GP jobs and doing some research with us. And I think this kind of it's all got to be in one line. We have to just let go of it because it's hard for me to say, no, you won't be penalized. I mean, you shouldn't be. But there almost isn't another option because the worst thing for us is for people leaving the profession completely. And I mean, that's from a very selfish perspective as a lead within the public health system. We want this young, dynamic, creative energy within the health system. And so for me, it's much better for someone to be a well-rounded, balanced, healthy person who has spent their time in different places, not necessarily pursuing a narrow goal, and comes to a point and say, actually, now I would like to specialize. That's better than breaking yourself trying to do everything quickly, if that makes sense.
It makes 100% sense. And I think for me, it's also, and I don't think it's landing, but if I look back at my own path, is that no learning is wasted. And there's a lot to be said for maturing as a doctor. That does not necessarily have to happen in the discipline that you want to pursue. Learning is never wasted, and it's hard to hear, and people struggle to believe it. But from a human perspective, and just from a maturity perspective and a resilience perspective, I truly, truly believe that. And I think if we can just shift a little bit around that,
Yeah.
it may make a difference.
Maybe just to add one more thing before handing over to Maria. I also want to really encourage us to, I say, when you've got your MBCHB, you have arrived. You have arrived at a place. It's not like a step like to another place and another, like just to take that point of arrival, that's a massive achievement. It's beyond a postgraduate degree because that's 3 years. It's a 6-year degree. That's why it's a doctor. That's why it's a doctorate of sorts. So we have to say you're arriving, and then your career takes different paths where you have other highlights and points along the way. It's not like I haven't gotten there until I get there because there is no end to that ladder.
Yeah, but it's so valuable. Maria, I'm sure you've got something to add in those lines.
I'd like to echo what Lydia is saying and what you're saying, that, no further learning is wasted. And I think we do have to dismantle this idea of that it's a linear path with very specific set out steps, because we're already seeing that that's not happening anymore in the system. And what's been interesting for me is some of the younger colleagues I've engaged with, and there've been a few on the podcast, who have done masters in public health, or I spoke with somebody the other day who's just completed a master's in mathematics, and somebody else who's involved in AI and machine learning, and their unique in-depth understanding of our healthcare system is going to allow them to make very unique contributions to medicine in all sorts of spheres where doctors have maybe been so busy with their heads down, focused on the clinical care on the front line, that we've not actually had an opportunity to step into those spaces and bring our experience of what it is to be working on the front line into those domains. And that one, the exposure to people from other fields and other disciplines and opportunities to learn in ways that we didn't have time for in medical school, and maybe most importantly, to develop aspects of ourselves that we didn't have time to develop, because medical school is so much about acquiring the knowledge and the clinical experience that, in my experience, people get to the end of that journey often with a kind of, like, if you ask them who they are, they don't know. Beyond medicine, beyond the doctor identity, beyond this idea of I'm going to be a specialist one day, they haven't thought about themselves in that way. So beginning to sort of step back and go, okay, that path is maybe starting to not be available to me. What else am I interested in? What else could I study? What other, from research to IT stuff to AI technology stuff that's unfolding now, and healthcare ethics and public health issues, and the very real point that Lydia raised about how we've somehow made generalists less important than specializing, and that there's this assumption that your career only means something if you become a registrar and you've now specialized in a field. I agree that it's much harder to be a generalist, and I think we need more generalists in the system. And for me, generalist expands beyond the GP range of application of clinical skills to an understanding of other paradigms and other disciplines and other fields, because we will bring that to the table in the future. And I always think that we forget that there is always order in chaos, and that change does not happen without some kind of dissonance. And this collective dissonance that has been building in the profession, the burnout, the disillusionment, the frustration, and it's really feels like it's reaching a tipping point in this sort of time that we're living in now. For me, it's an opening into us doing something different, because it's not sustainable. What's been happening in the profession is not sustainable. Our suicide rates are higher than any other professions. Our substance abuse rates are, it's all of those. We know those statistics. I don't need to recite them. So it feels like we can either get lost in the despair and the hopelessness of the structure that is slowly being dismantled around us, which includes the idea of who we thought we were going to be, or we can actually go, this is an opportunity. And yeah, it's going to stretch me because I have to think outside the box, and I have to take steps that maybe I didn't anticipate I would have to take, and I will have to learn things that I didn't think were part of my ambit as a doctor. But I think it'll also make people so much more equipped to actually contribute to a transformation of our health system.
Yeah, that makes me, it actually excites me. It excites me to think about that. And however painful this dismantling is this deep, deep, deep belief that it is so necessary. And perhaps this is the only way that we change. It becomes, it's just simply too uncomfortable to remain as is. And I know that that they probably won't believe me, but as a consolation to our students and our young doctors, these questions I asked them. I've asked them to Maria 3 weeks ago. It is a perpetual process of growth, of breaking down, of remembering, of rediscovery, and I think the most powerful thing is to let go of this sense of one day and the big arrival. That really, it's not been my experience. And both of you, if I look at you, and maybe that will be helpful for each of you to share your journey, because Lydia, I know you're an icon in surgery, and you have followed, in terms of surgery, a fairly traditional path, but you've got aspects to your role in medicine that is counter to a lot that people associate with surgery. Your way of looking at things, your activism, there's aspects of your journey that's also been very atypical, and I think it would be helpful for people to hear from someone like you. It doesn't always fall like a domino in the right order, and in the predicted path. And Maria, I think you as well. So I don't know if you're willing and able to share.
I'm happy to give some sense of the. I mean, I love this phrase that no change doesn't come without dissonance. We're heading for a lot of change, I hope, because there's quite a lot of dissonance going on. So, I mean, I have throughout, and Liana and I have had these conversations. I mean, throughout my career, I've had this constant pull between these two different sort of paths of my interest, where um, I love being in theater. I love the immediate impact of surgical intervention, and it's a very intimate thing, surgery. You have a relationship with the patient, you operate them, you connect with their body in a particular way, and then you see them afterwards, and it's like quite um, profound. And also it's fun and rewarding, and there's a bit of adrenaline. So I quite liked that, and it was sort of an unexpected thing to do, and my mother told me not to do it. So those are the kind of the reasons that I love surgery. She was horrified, my mother. She's a doctor as well. She also discouraged me from doing medicine. This is a very hard life. So my daughter, by the way, at 13, she's like, I'm going to be a doctor. This is my thing. I'm like, okay, here we go. So, and then there's this other side that I've got, the sort of social justice lens that comes from when I was a teenager, and political involvement, and activism and struggle, campaigning around the right to health and against budget cuts and for change at a macro level. And I have a sense of what we can do within the health system, and this sort of constant feeling like I'm not sure if I should be doing that big system stuff, or I should be working in this smaller sort of day-to-day, one patient at a time. And I mean, Liana has a similar pull between those things. And so somehow my career has ended up with a little bit of both, because being head of a department, it's an academic leadership role, which has a leadership role within the country, but also many students and registrars and people that you engage with often. So there's a systems element to it. So I do less clinical work now, but I still do lists and clinics, but I do a lot more leadership and management type of work, which has been interesting because engaging with how power is constructed and is reproduced within big bureaucracies has been, I mean, let's just say, instructive.
Yeah.
And being part of it, and also trying to change it and seeing the problems with it, that's been quite extraordinary. And then of course now what's my next step? And it's amazing because I've been in the job for 2.5 years. It's kind of like, okay, I can see when I outgrow this, what does it look like next? So I suppose it gives you a sense that there is always growth. You are every sort of between 7 to 10 years. I think there's a shift, and you need to grow and do something. And when I see people who haven't had an opportunity to grow within their space, they become constrained, and it becomes a little bit toxic for them in a sense. If they can't grow, they get a bit cramped, and they jostle people around them a lot. And so I have a phrase in my head, which is that the vital force in every living thing is always striving for its full potential. So it's not about constant ambition, but it's what that full potential looks and feels like. And I guess in my career, there was a lot of serendipity. It was not like I knew I was going to be an endocrine surgeon and head of surgery. That was not how it panned out. The opportunities opened at the moments where it felt like the right door to open. Of course, you then have to walk through it. But if I had a fixed view of what I wanted to do, which was a district general surgeon, that's what I wanted to do. If I had fixed on that, I would have struggled, because I would have struggled with my lots of things, and that's also something for early career doctors and doctors in general and everyone. I sometimes see people knocking their heads against something very specific that they've fixed, that this must be the thing that I want to do. And I think it's a different kind of connection to a passion that we need that isn't specifically named, but that is, this feels right, or I want to go this way, and I can't, this is blocked. Let me shift a little bit this way and see if something opens. So I do think we need to align a little bit with those energies in the way we make our career decisions. And almost everybody that you speak to that's happy and where they're working, they hadn't planned it exactly like that. They had followed some gut intuition, and we need to kind of reconnect with that to provide that guidance.
Beautiful. Maria,
Yeah.
your story?
Again, I feel like Lydia is so articulate. She's describing everything that I would want to say. And this idea, when I said earlier about like getting still long enough to ask what is calling me, because that same thing that called you to medicine has a blueprint or a map for the next thing. And the clue or the insight that it's heading in that way is something that excites you, is the passion, is the thing that makes you come alive, the idea that your head might be going, that's crazy, that's not what I thought I was going to be doing, but the door is opening, or your heart is pulling you in that direction. Having the courage to follow that. I mean, when I finished medical school, I was offered 2 different registrar posts, one in internal medicine, and then the other was a research post in obs and gynae. Both were of interest to me. But something about it just did not feel right. And if I go back a little bit further, when I was at school, for about 4 years, I grappled with medicine, psychology, medicine, psychology, medicine, psychology. And I'll admit that I chose medicine for 2 reasons. One, it had more status and credibility. And in those years, my family had the kind of only crazy people see psychologists. You're going to be working with crazy people all day. And the other was that I grew up in a home where the only 2 people I ever saw my parents defer to with some kind of measure of deference was the priest and the doctor. So those 2 people represented a lot of power in my community. And I wanted power because as a young girl, I felt really powerless. I grew up in a very patriarchal culture, and there was such a sense of, if I'm a doctor, then I'm going to have that power. And then it was crazy to finish medical school and feel powerless and realize how little I knew and how little was in my control, actually, and how I was talking to patients all day whose circumstances, were such that I could make a little difference in how they were feeling today, but I couldn't change those bigger societal, systemic things that were problematic. And I could put a Band-Aid on their physical symptoms, but no one was talking about their emotional pain or their mental pain, so when I left, and then I started working in GP practice, and I had a baby, and I carried on working in GP practice, and then it was like, I can't even remember how it unfolded, that I heard about alternative medicine and homeopathy and went to study those things, and they just opened my mind to a completely different way of thinking about health. Coaching as a profession did not exist. The word coach was not an entity. When I started kind of hearing about coaching, it was business coaching in corporates, mainly overseas. Top executives were doing coaching. Now health coaching is mainstream. So it was also when I did a life coaching diploma with the idea that I would learn a few skills that would be helpful in my consultations. The idea that you would coach people to health didn't exist. So I guess I also want to encourage people to realize that the world continues to grow and evolve and change, and the label for what you will end up doing one day might not even be available to us. It may not even be part of our vocabulary. And we have to be willing to step outside of what we know and explore what's presenting itself to us. Let go of our need for certainty, because the complexity of the world that we're living in, nothing is certain. Absolutely not. In fact, the only thing that's certain is that we're all going to die at some point. Nothing else is certain. And so it's kind of almost to like step into the vulnerability of that, but with shaky knees and shaky legs, kind of listen to the heart that is saying, I'm here to make a difference, and I can make a difference in a million different ways. Which doors are available to me right now? And instead of fixating on the one that won't open, maybe you always wanted to go and do art and you think it's got nothing to do with medicine, and maybe it has everything to do with what you're supposed to be doing. So open that door, pursue that interest. Yeah. I mean, I've noticed myself, I get like, oh, there's so much available if you allow yourself to open your mind to other possibilities. And yeah, my own journey, I'm 58 now, and every 4 or 5 years, my career goes through some kind of new shift or iteration. I learn something new, I do another course, and it shifts and it changes. And at the core of it is always the thread of service, helping people, making a difference, helping people to be more whole. I've let go the idea of what the label of that is. And Liana will know I call myself an awakening doctor because it feels like it's an ongoing process of waking up to more of what is possible, more of who I am. And when I think back to the young me that thought that it was all going to be clear cut and that there was a fixed path ahead of me, I feel compassion, and I feel for all these young colleagues who are kind of anxious about the future. But I also believe that each of us has a blueprint and a design. And if we are here on this planet at this time, it is to make a contribution and be a part of the change. And you will find your place. You will find your place.
It's so encouraging. So I'm going to try and summarize, and please, Lydia and Maria, just chip in. But I think what I'm taking from this conversation is for everybody, all our young colleagues, our future doctors, a future of health, but also of wellness in this country, of sanity to a certain degree, is to acknowledge and know that we're acknowledging that it is a strange time. It is a hard time. You're not wrong. There is nothing wrong with you. This is hard. At the same time, this is also not a time for fragility. And I say this with the utmost respect. It is, what I mean by that is we have to be more open than ever. We have to be more vulnerable than ever. We have to be supported more than ever. But we also have to find that grit, the insight, the what brought us here in the first place, because it is needed. It is desperately needed. It asks of us to remain extremely curious and to be incredibly responsible with our own well-being. And I'm saying that fully acknowledging that the world that you move in every day does not necessarily encourage that, is not necessarily an environment that looks like an environment where people take care of themselves. But then let your generation be the first, be the change. I think in this room, there are women, there are people that have pursued it, that have scratched the surface of it, and hopefully you are the wave that's necessary to shift this. Yeah, I don't know, Lydia, Maria, what else do we say to these?
That's beautifully put, Liana. Maybe just as a final comment about surviving our wards and our hospitals, because that is a thing. I think it's difficult because we're asking young doctors to come in and be that, and also be the change. So I think the acknowledgement that, you know, as the more seniors and your elders within the system, we often don't know, and we're making many mistakes. Also that as a person in the hierarchy at a level where you don't have a lot of power, it can be difficult and dangerous to say that. So to be able to notice, to be able to see, and to be able to see things that are going right and things that are going wrong, and then to have a self-aware decision. What am I able to change right now from my with my sphere of influence, my sphere of power, with the people that I'm connected to around me? I mean, so when I do some of the advocacy teaching, it's about of all the many wrongs that I might have seen today, which of the things am I able to do something about that's within my sphere of influence, within my sphere of power? So if the thing that you're able to do today is to make sure that this patient is listened to in a respectful way, and that's actually what you can manage because the operation's been cancelled and there's no bed, and you can't get that operation sorted, nor can you get the bed in that situation, to make that contribution as an act of service, but also as an act of self-service, because I really believe that we can pull ourselves through with one set of eyes at a time from our patients, because something about that connection, that human connection with people that we are serving, it's a mutual service in a sense. So that's the one part, just to remember that the power of the one-on-one physician as healer, doctor-patient relationship can take you through a lot. And the second part is your colleagues, your peers. When I see people making it through really tough situations with either austerity or difficult teams or all those things, like as seniors, etc., it's the quality of the relationship with peers that makes a big difference. So who's in my team, try and build trust and relationship with other interns, medical officer, doctors, the people that are around you. So not to get into a divisive me them kind of, but to try and build that, consciously build that solidarity, because it is always easier when the burden is shared in that way. And that's what I've seen with people coming through the system, be it interns, registrars, medical officers, etc. The quality of that connection with one another and with patients can help with the more difficult times, as we are moving towards a place where we don't have to have difficult times, because we want to change the system so we don't have to teach people how to survive it.
Maria, any last words from you?
Yeah, I think the emphasis on connection and that ability to stay connected to what is within your sphere of influence in this moment, how you can make meaning of this moment, and to just stop and pause and take a breath. And, when the multitude of things you cannot control become overwhelming, to focus on the one thing that you can do and that you can do really well. And then I think the silo thing of, we're quite conditioned in our profession to always be the expert, to always have all the answers. Vulnerability is really difficult. So that thing of the network of peer support and being able to talk to each other more honestly and more openly about the struggles. And I mean, I'm really encouraged because I'm seeing all these young people on social media talking about the realities of practicing medicine. And I think it's that thing of, you are not alone. And it's sometimes easy to forget that you are not alone when you are overwhelmed by what is going on. And so to have at least one person that you are willing to reach out to, and to put yourself in environments where people are having honest conversations. And I think it extends beyond the peer group to, has medical school diminished your life outside of the profession? And if so, whilst you're waiting for these other opportunities to become available, can you spend some time building up your social network of support, family, friends, community activities outside of the realm of medicine, so that you can remember that actually you're a whole person too, and that your whole identity does not center around being a doctor. And I think one of the hardest things to do as a doctor is to separate out who you are from the work that you do. And when your identity is completely invested in what you do, then it can feel like the whole world is falling apart when those opportunities are not available. But if you remember that you have value and that you have meaning in the world, just because you are here, just because you have friends and family and community and heart, it makes it a bit easier to go through the difficult times.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to give an opportunity for questions. don't know if anybody is going to be brave enough to put up their hands. I really hope that they will. So is there anybody from the audience that has a comment or a question? You know that we really try to be open and transparent on this forum. So anybody has a question or even just a comment, you're so welcome. Don't see anything now. And if you're too shy, you know, you can always pop an email and then I can always connect with Maria.
I don't know if that's her hand.
Oh, where's a hand?
Oh, it's gone.
Gone. Was there a hand? Well, if you put up your hand, just speak up.
Or type something in the chat if that's easier for you, if you don't want to speak.
Silence. But if you know, you can always send an email afterwards. I'll do my best to respond. I can also send your question to Maria or to Lydia or to both of them and get back to you with some feedback. There's a hand, Susanda.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, doctors. Thank you so much for this talk. I think it has been quite informative. I just have a question. I think I'm in final year at the moment, and a part of me has come to realize that perhaps I don't want to stay in the clinical space. My issue is that I don't know where to get information as to what career path I can take outside of the clinical space. So can you please direct me where I can actually get this information?
Maria, maybe you're a good one to answer this question.
Sure. It's a really tough one because there isn't a specific, like, if you're not going to stay in the clinical space, go and do this. But I think it starts with beginning to think a little bit differently about what skills you have acquired at medical school. And so some of the broader categories would be around writing skills, the ability to think about research in a critical way, the ability to manage complex projects, the ability to I think it's about thinking outside of the box. And when you say where to go, I'm going to be honest, right now in this moment, I don't know. But I think it's about recognizing that you have many different skills, whether those be in academia or in research or in writing or in managing projects, and that you can start looking in fields outside of the medical arena for those contributions. My experience with the few clients that I have had who are in that sort of space and beginning to explore other possibilities is that somehow your clinical background and experience always informs what you will do and what you will contribute in those other arenas. But I don't have a direct answer, Susanda. I'm sorry. I wish I could say go there and you'll find the options. There are a few coaches who are specialized in that arena. And if you reach out to me, I can maybe I will need to pull together a list of people who specialize in that. My personal preference is that we trust the instinct of what is calling you, what are your interests, what were the diverse things that made you eligible for medical school in the first place, what were the skills and talents that have maybe been neglected a little bit while you've been at medical school because you've had to focus so much on your training, and is there a way where those interests begin to merge with your clinical acumen to create a new opportunity and a new possibility for you?
Susanda, firstly, thank you very
for
much.
that response.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being brave enough to say that, you know, clinical medicine may not be the place where you can contribute your best self to. I think my question would be very similar to Maria is, if you've thought this far, I think you've got an innate curiosity, something that's pulling, something that's tugging on you, that's not clinical medicine. And I would try and speak to as many people as possible that's explored that pathway. I don't know what that is for you, if it is completely outside of medicine or if it's just not clinical medicine. If it is still within medicine, there is amazing opportunities in terms of public health. There is some opportunities in terms of research. There is opportunities in terms of epidemiology. Health economics is another very interesting sphere that you can take a look at, even at the UCT Business School at the Bertha Hub. There's a lot happening, and it's difficult doing it on this call, but my sense is that, you know, making a statement like this doesn't come overnight. It's not impulsive for you. So there's something that's been tugging on you for a while. And I think you've got a direction that you want to go into, and just stay open, stay curious, follow the breadcrumbs, and speak to as many people as possible. That's working more in a sphere that feels more comfortable to you. I don't know if that makes sense. Lydia, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I think that's nicely covered. I think one of the beautiful things about a degree in MBCHP is its versatility. I mean, you could end up being someone that comes to work every day and looks down a microscope, or you could be doing experiments in the laboratory, or you could be writing, translating health knowledge to the public. You could be looking at systems through health economics. That's all still within the profession. You could be managing facilities. You could be doing big data assessment. You know, there are many things with they can do many things with the MBCHB. You can travel on ships. There are all kinds of things you can do. So, I mean, I think that may not be immediately within our vision. So I think it's either with the actual, within medicine, the non-clinical aspects of the MBCHB potential. And then outside of that, of course, people have done MBAs and have gone into to run hospitals or within medical schemes or within pharmaceutical companies. So these are all people that I know that have done variations on the theme of what it means to be a doctor.
And I know
I think that idea, sorry, Liana, of specializing, you know, we've limited our thinking to clinical specialties as opposed to a postgraduate degree, a postgraduate qualification of some sort that can be in other fields or other disciplines.
For sure. And I think as a 6 year, it's very hard to sort of, you don't have capacity for much. But even if you just go onto Harvard or MIT's websites, they've got a lot of open access courses. And I'm not saying do a course because I don't think you've got capacity right now, but even just looking at the names of courses has sometimes sort of inspired me to see, oh, there's a leadership in medicine, or there's an innovation in medicine, or there's, you know, just even looking at, oh, these things are available and sometimes even open access. It jars there, sort of kry die ratte aan die gang, you know, sort of makes you think a little bit.
I
Thank
will
you
also
so
say
much for
that
those
I interviewed Dr. Aisha Muller on my podcast last month, and she left clinical medicine 3 months into her internship. And she talks quite honestly and openly about what a struggle it was and how much guilt and shame and blame and all of that. And now she's kind of in the middle of a PhD in all sorts of really interesting things that I'm not even going to remember now. I know it has something to do with machine learning. And it was so interesting to talk to her about kind of that feeling of like, I'm nothing without medicine, to the whole person that she is today and the meaning that she's finding in what she's busy with. So there is life on the other side of that feeling of like, you know, I have to give up something I've invested 6 years of my life in. And I like to believe that you invested this much time in something because it is an integral part of what you will do next, even though we may not know what that is today.
Perfect. So thank you so much, everybody, for the beautiful comments on the side. Despite the tremendous delay in starting, we've wrapped an hour, we've covered an hour. I am so grateful of your time, Maria, Lydia. I really, really appreciate it. This was as helpful for me, I'm sure, as it was for everybody else out there. I think it's so important having these conversations, of deliberately building it into our spaces, into our training, into where we function and how we work and how we deal with each other. So thank you for your willingness to have these conversations. For everybody else out there, I'll get the recording from Maria. We'll post it on the website. It will be available. If you know of friends that missed the conversation, that you think would benefit from it, please share it with them. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Liana. Thank you for
Yeah.
bringing beautiful things into beautiful spaces all the time. So thank you so much. And thank you.
Yes.
Lovely to meet you, Maria.
And you too, Lydia. Liana's been wanting to connect us for a while, and I think that if you're open to it, I will reach out on another occasion and maybe we do a podcast conversation sometime.
Yes, yeah. Or you can coach me because
We can do that too. I will
Right.
reach out. I will definitely reach out. Thank you. And thank
Wonderful.
you to everyone who showed
Thank
up for this
you.
conversation.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Liana, for the space, really.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
You
You too.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.